Hello and welcome to the Turn 4 podcast. I am your host, Dan Maldonado. This is your first time listening? Welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. This podcast gives a fan's perspective on IndyCar and other forms of motorsport. Before we get started, let me introduce you to my co-host, Tim Reiner. Hey, Timmy.
Hello, Dan.
How are you?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm good. Not as good as you, though, sporting the Arrow McLaren hat.
Yeah, if you listen to our Indy 500 show, you'd know why I have this hat. I've got a bunch of swag, and it's really not mine. It's my son's, but
yeah,
it was left in my office, so I figured I'd put it on for the show because there was a lot of stuff going on with Arrow McLaren that we talked about a few days ago.
What's the saying? Possession is 9/10 of something or other. Owner or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
Like it.
Yeah, something like I don't know either. But so yeah, I'm sporting a new brim, which goes against what I normally wear, right? I normally wear the Magnus Racing hat, which is the 44 Lewis Hamilton, by the way, is what you always call it. And then I have my IndyCar hat. It's not in here, so that's why I got this one on. No one wants to see my bald head.
There you go, the bold guy.
The bold guy.
Hey, this is 3 shows in a row we're traveling. Is it 3 shows or 4 shows in a row where one of us are traveling?
Oh yeah, you more so than me, but
yeah.
Because I don't normally travel on Mondays, so I travel later this week, but I'm not traveling today.
Yeah. Had to do this one today. I'm in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Never been here before. It's beautiful. My son texted me about it earlier, and he said, "What's it like?" And I said, "If you didn't know any better, you'd think you were in like north central Michigan. It doesn't look much different than home. It's green and lush, but it's hot. It's super hot here,
which is crazy because it's in the 90s. Of us. That heat's coming our way.
Yep. So it's super hot, but it's beautiful.
So you're past all the mountain range, right? The Black Hills. You're further away from them, right? You don't know?
I don't know what that means.
Okay. Well, hopefully some of our South Dakota listeners can give us some tips on geography over there. And where Dan actually is.
Yeah. And ironically, I'm driving to Iowa tomorrow because that's actually where my meeting is. Won't be anywhere near Newton, Iowa, unfortunately, but I'm driving to Iowa tomorrow. So our best flight option was to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and then I get to drive to Orange City, Iowa tomorrow.
How far is that?
Hour and a half.
Sounds like a long ways. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's not horrible, right?
So if we have any listeners left, we're going to discuss the Honda Indy Toronto. This is this series' first visit back to Toronto since 2019 because of the global pandemic. Looks from the crowd that the fans of Toronto and probably the surrounding provinces missed their IndyCar action because it was crowded in Toronto for this past weekend. It looked like a pretty good crowd, didn't it, Tim?
Yeah, it looked really good. There was a lot of people in the stands and then standing along the fence lines, as well as some other down the back straight. There was a whole area that looked like people were just sitting up on a hill, which looked really nice. So yeah, I think everybody was expecting it to be full. I know they had ticket sales that were doing really well early on, so they figured they'd have a good turnout, and it looked like they did. And then another interesting thing, I saw the paddock. Paddock is inside the convention center or whatever you want to call it. And they had the fans in there, and it looked crazy busy in there too. I don't know if you had to have paddock passes to get in there, or if it was like Detroit where you can just walk in, but it looked pretty full.
Yeah, I don't know. Good question. But yeah, I saw those pictures too. That it looked pretty busy, pretty crowded. Speaking of crowded, it's a good problem. But it's a problem nonetheless. Pit Road was crowded, right? Pit Road here in Toronto is too small for the number of teams that arrived in Toronto to race this weekend. Keep in mind also that Simona Di Silvestro and Tatiana Calderon were both absent this weekend. So I believe what I heard in the week leading up to this Toronto race was that the standard length for IndyCar pit stalls was 30 feet. And that was reduced to 25 for this weekend's race. And of course, it was kind of like turned and curved, and there was some, it was very unusual. So if the series continues to grow and we get 2 or 3 more full-time rides in the series next year, they're going to have to figure out something to do there in Toronto to help out this pit lane. We're lucky. We dodged a little bit of a bullet there because I fully expected something to go wrong there.
Yeah, I did as well. It was super tight, and that track's always had the curved pit lane. It's just the way the road goes and the way they set it up. But yeah, I know you mentioned Simona and Tatiana not being there. One was not scheduled to be there originally, right? Because they're only doing the next race they're doing is Nashville, which would be Simona. But Tatiana, and the whole issue with the sponsorship is why she was not there, which was unfortunate, which I saw she had put something out on Twitter and she got a lot of good responses. So if you see it out there, make sure you give her a little a like out there, because we all want to see her back.
Yeah. Continuing, just a few observations here before we get into our team by team. Andretti said they expect all their drivers to get on board with being respectful of each other, and I'm paraphrasing, of course. But warm up, guess who had kind of a thing in warm up, Tim?
It had to be, had to be the two.
And guess who else?
Well, it had to be Rossi, right?
Michael Rossi. Yes.
I'm not even looking at the notes. Okay.
Yep. Going into turn 3, racing each other just a little, maybe a little too much in warm up, plus your teammates.
This is morning warm up. Yeah.
Yeah, on Sunday. So I would just say that Grosjean, somebody forgot to tell him, you don't pass on the inside there. It's just too hard based on how the apex is and then how the subsequent corner is. So, but no harm, no foul. It was fine. He got away with it, and but it had potential.
Wow,
it had potential. Yeah.
Well, they steered clear of each other. They steered clear of each other during the race, so that was not an issue. So it was just a little bit in the morning warm up.
Rossi's issue wasn't with a teammate.
No, it was with the McLaren.
Yeah. Final observation here for me. Graham, in morning warm up, Graham Rahal was complaining that his rear brakes were overheating in that warm up. I think it was Townsend Bell had pointed out during the broadcast that, the exhaust outlet for the Honda engine is right near where the cooling ducts are for the rear brakes. I noticed during the race that the Penskes have kind of an elongated snorkel that brings up their brake duct cooling ducts up sort of above the slope of the bodywork in the back of the Dallara, which I thought was interesting. And I didn't see that on anybody else. It's not to say nobody else is running it, but I didn't notice that anywhere else except for on the Penskes. Which to me, if that's an area of development that they're allowed to do, I'm just surprised that other people aren't doing it.
Yeah, and Penske's always looking to innovate. They did that back in the 90s for sure, a ton. They had their own chassis, so it doesn't surprise me that they would do something like that. I didn't see it, nor did I hear about it, so I might have to go back and look.
Yeah.
Was it clunky or was it cool?
No, it was totally cool. Totally exactly how you'd expect it from Penske. Not something that was just a clunky add-on or anything. It looked really good. Looked really good. So good. You got a couple of points you want to make before we get into the team by team?
I do, yeah. So I just wanted to say I thought overall it was a good race, right? It was a little uneventful in my personal thoughts on it. Not that everybody,
I agree, especially
cares.
Coming out of Mid Ohio, right?
Yeah, and it was
very uneventful.
Yeah, exactly, and super Dixon-esque type of win, right? So he sort of took command and did his thing. As you mentioned, the crowd was great. And I know I kind of bashed a little bit Mid Ohio with the crowd, thinking it wasn't as full as the movie theater was that I was in. But the crowd was good. But I have to mention the track surface looked horrific. Is that fair?
Totally agree. Yeah, it was horrendous. That was terrible.
Yeah, and there was a yellow because of it, because part of the concrete came up in one of the areas, which I thought was going to be an elongated yellow or maybe even a red, and it didn't turn out that way. I did like the sweatshirt that was going around the track. I know the commentator said they thought it might do a full lap. I don't think it ever did. Someone got it off the track. I think Pillow had part of it on his trim for his front wing, which was interesting. But also the wall and the fencing looked like they were from the first Toronto Grand Prix, which happened in 1986. It just, I felt like everything just needed a facelift, and I sure hope they do it. And I think IndyCar can work with the city to make that happen. So I don't know if anybody else saw that or thought it. It was like the first thing when I saw Friday practice was the first thing I sort of looked at and went, ooh. And
Yeah, so the fencing and some of the concrete borders and stuff like that, I think that falls to Green Stavery, who are the promoters for the race. I think they own that equipment and set up for that. But Toronto, the city of Toronto, certainly would be responsible for the road, and the streets of this circuit were terrible.
yeah.
How bad they looked. I mean, really. I mean, they talk about Detroit being bumpy. Detroit's nowhere near as bumpy as this, and it just and it looks really bad. You know, it
Yeah,
looks
it
really
doesn't
bad.
it
But
doesn't look good.
yeah, I mean, we can't really. There's a joke on the 20 Kornheiser show last year where somebody had identified Toronto as being part of the Midwest, and I don't want to go that far, but you know, Toronto's winters are just as harsh, if not a little harsher than ours, and you know
Yeah,
how
for sure.
bad Michigan roads are. So
Yeah, definitely.
it's yeah,
And you could tell
it's
there
really
was so many different types of concrete and patches and blacktop and asphalt. It just went on and on and on. And I would imagine as a driver, you're just getting beat up and tore up on a regular basis when you're on that track. So hopefully they do something. I think it'd be better for the sport and just from a aesthetic purposes for those that are casual viewers that want to watch. And I know this was only on Peacock, so I'm sure there weren't that many casual viewers. But
yeah.
anyways, it was a good race, and like you said, the drama didn't happen that we all anticipated coming out of Mid Ohio. So yeah, it seems like things are sort of back to normal, except for the whole Pelot thing, but everything else seems kind
Yeah.
of back in line.
And I think the Pelot thing was very well coached going into this weekend, probably from the folks at Ganassi, right? That just said our official position is we don't have a position, right? We're not going to talk about it to the media. We're not going to talk about it on social media. We're not going to keep adding fuel to this fire. I mean, the folks at Peacock, NBC, you know, they obviously have to ask the questions. They did every time they could, and they asked not just the folks at Ganassi Racing. They asked everybody up and down the paddock. So those that chose to give an opinion gave their opinion. The ones who didn't, and you know, they're just going to move on. This is going to be something we're going to live with through the end of the season, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's always going to be brought up. It's going to be a topic until it's officially announced of what's going on. And both teams agree to whatever the announcement is, along with the driver.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. The best way to put controversy behind you certainly is to win. And Ganassi, Chip Ganassi Racing put in a winning effort and got their top drivers in the top 6.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kicked off obviously by a win from Scott Dixon. You know, Tim, it was nice to see Dixie battling for pole on Saturday. He has the pole this year at Indy, but I believe the broadcast said that this would have been his first non-Indy pole since 2016. So if I heard that right, that's insane.
I did hear that too,
right?
Which is a long time ago.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah. So Dixon did pull out this victory. He did benefit at the end of this race with Colton having to save fuel while holding off Felix Rosenquist. And then what I read today was also while battling the fact that his hair was falling into his face, which I think that's the first time in my 30 years of watching IndyCar racing I've ever heard that.
Scott's
a
hair?
balaclava malfunction. No, Colton's hair was getting in the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah,
that makes sense.
It's certainly not taking away anything from Dixon's weekend. He was fast all weekend. This is his 4th win at Toronto, and he earned this. There's no other way to say it. This also puts Dixie into a tie with Mario Andretti for 2nd all-time IndyCar wins with 52 wins.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, that's crazy. Kind of makes you realize how long, first of all, his career has been, and for how long he's been good.
I know. He's outstanding. He's top 2-3 drivers of all time for IndyCar. If you look at it that way from a win perspective.
Has to be. Well, 2nd, because it's AJ Foyt who is insurmountable. I don't know the number. And then Mario Andretti. He's tied with Mario Andretti. He's going to win 15 more races. I don't think. Yeah. I would be surprised if he pulled out 15 more.
And I did see Mario send a tweet as well and congratulated him on tying his record. So Now he just needs to go out and beat it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the next.
Get out there and
Yeah.
solo number 2.
Yeah.
It would be a big deal. Can he do it? Yeah. If, I think it would be very difficult at this point of his career. If he does race 5 more years,
Mm-hmm.
he'd have to average 3 wins a year, right?
Yeah.
For the next 5 years. And I
Mhm.
think with the level of competition where it is, I think it would be very, very difficult.
Yeah. Well, Chip Ganassi Racing put together a great setup for these drivers. And from what I was hearing and listening and watching was that they were working on setups that would last over the entire stint of the tire, right? So the whole strategy there with the car. So where they said other drivers could just focus on like getting fast laps, but they've got a sort of a different methodology at Chip Ganassi Racing and say, how can we make it not just work 1 lap, but over the life of 30 laps, whatever it might be. And I think it's just noteworthy to point out that Dixon did get the lead through pit stop strategy. And so his team was quicker than what the Andretti team was in order to take over first place. And then once he had it, which was, I think around lap 32 or something like that, he really never gave it up except for strategies that people that were off the normal strategy for pit stops. So that's kind of what it looked like. So he was dominant, and I think he was just keeping the distance he needed to keep in order to keep Herta at bay. I know Herta did get up there a little bit and challenged him, but that then ran into fuel issues for Herta, where Dixon still was able to go without having major fuel issues.
Yeah. Marcus Ericsson, 5th place. Marcus did have a spirited race with his teammate Palou. Inside the team, Palou is his closest challenger for the championship. We'll talk a little bit about that later on, but Palou finishes this race in 6th place, pushes him in 3rd place for the championship. So he is, his most, the one I think you'd be more concerned about, because he's driving equal equipment and he knows what your setup is and he knows what your intricacies are on this track. So there's always something there to be said with that, right? There was a couple of moments racing with Palou, but they drove respectfully. There wasn't anything to be overly concerned about. I heard on the radio broadcast, because I did listen to that on IMS Radio Network, and in that broadcast, Ericsson said, "Please tell him not to crash us out." So he being Palou, which,
wow.
Let's face it, Palou's not a dirty driver. They did have their thing at Road America, but there's nothing in the 3 years that Palou's been in the series that would suggest he's a dirty driver.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a clean but close racing, and I'm glad there wasn't the repeat of Mid-Ohio, even though I just said it was kind of a, did I say boring? No, I said it was kind of a, I don't know, I have to look at my notes, but it was a uneventful race. But you don't want to see teammates take each other out. No owner wants to see that. So from their perspective, that was good, clean racing. And coming off the news that Palou had, you definitely don't want to wreck your teammate by any means. Even though he gave him a little tap, and when he gave him a little tap, and that's when I'm sure the radio came over. But and Ericsson got a little loose on that, which was interesting to see.
Yeah. That would have been a surefire way to tick off Chip Ganassi, I'm sure, and get you parked through the rest of the year if you had taken out Ericsson. So Jimmy Johnson finishes 21st, super long on that first stint. Similar strategy as Conor Daly. It didn't matter, though. I mean, it moved right back to the back of the field. Then he got turned by Cal Kirkwood. Kirkwood's fault on that one for how I could see that for sure.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
There was a point there where Jimmy was running like 3rd, because of this strategy or whatever. But I mean, at the end of the day, he was just holding everybody up. It was just in the way.
It was crazy.
That strategy wasn't going to work. Yeah. So after he had, the spin, Kirkwood out, Jimmy Johnson carries on. He was 3 laps down at that point. Jimmy did 7 pit stops in that race yesterday.
Oh, really? I have the box score up. I didn't look at his box score.
Yeah,
7 pit stops yesterday. That's not going to get you anything except a 21st place finish. That's it.
And 12 laps down. Yeah.
12? Wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Last one running. Everybody else was out behind him.
Yeah, I don't want to pile on. I'm not piling on Jimmy, even though it sounds like if you listen to this podcast on a regular basis, it sounds like I'm piling on. I just want to make this quick observation. If you notice, it's not the Jimmy Johnson show anymore, like it was last year, where he consumed a lot of the bandwidth in this series, and it's not the case anymore. He's not getting a lot of attention. He'll probably get more attention going into Iowa because it's an oval, so we expect him to do better on the ovals. There was a lot more Jimmy Johnson talk before Texas, before Indy, and I expect that to be the case going into this oval. I don't expect him to have that same level of success in Iowa that he did at Texas at all, because that's sheer chaos for 200 miles or whatever it's going to be. So
yeah, it's I don't want to pile on either, but I was watching the Dale Jr. download, and I was watching it because I was watching, whatever it's called. I was watching the Tour de France, right? That's going on now, and then Peacock just switched to other stuff, and I was like, I don't even know what's on, and so the Dale Jr. download was on, and I think it was Jeff Bodine or Todd Bodine, one of the Bodines was on, and I think it's an older episode, by the way, but they were talking about Jimmy, and the Bodine was like, I don't know what he's doing. He needs to get off that. He needs to just retire and be done and enjoy life. And so it was a very interesting perspective from the NASCAR folks talking about Jimmy and IndyCar, and he was perplexed what Jimmy was doing. But Jimmy has that inner drive and he wants to succeed. And I know as a kid, his dream was to be in open wheel, and he went obviously to stock car. So at the end of the day, he's living out his childhood dream, but it hasn't turned out to what I'm sure he imagined in his head.
Nope.
Or what he dreamed about, right?
Nope. Vacate that seat, dude.
I would do that.
Give a young guy a chance. Moving on, Andretti, second place, Colton Herta. I don't think it's any surprise that Herta was fast at Toronto. He seems to excel on these bumpy street circuits, a la Nashville. I don't understand Brian telling Colton a couple of times toward the end of this race, again, I'm paraphrasing, save fuel if you can, but if you can take the spot from Dixon, go for it. Either we're saving fuel or we're not, right? Like we have to pick a side on this thing. I just don't understand any of that.
I totally agree. Like you gotta, play out your strategy, whatever your strategy is. This happened to him at Mid-Ohio where they didn't go in the pits when they should have gone in the pits. And now you're giving conflicting information to a driver of whether you go or you don't go, and whether we're going to have fuel at the end or we're going to have to save a ton. They did take a shot for a little bit at Dixon, but then obviously the fuel mapping had to change in order to survive to the end of the race, which they were able to. I guess I was a little surprised that they were as fast as they were, but this is the team that was starting to revert back to setups prior to the aero screens. So maybe that's what they're
actually doing. Rossi's team that's doing that.
Yeah, but maybe the whole Andretti squad decided to scrap some stuff because I don't know if everybody was super fast, and I don't know if they're still trying to find setups at different tracks, and they said let's go back for all the cars. But I know specifically, like you mentioned, it was Rossi.
Yeah, the only reason why I say that is because it to me, again, fans' perspective, right? We're not insiders, and I'm not an engineer, but it doesn't look to me at all like that Andretti team shares any setup information or how they go to track, because the cars are all over the board. I mean, here's a great example, right? Second place for Brian Herta or Colton Herta, 16th place Roman Grosjean, right? He had a speeding penalty. Obviously, he had a speeding penalty for pit lane. He moved to the back of the field. Then he was picking a fight with Jack Harvey going out of the front stretch. It's just I was rooting for Roman Grosjean until some of whatever it is that he's been doing going into this season. And the situation with Rossi, I think that's personality conflicts. But at the end of the day, Grosjean is barging his way through everybody on track. Like, hey, I'm Roman. I deserve to be up there. So get out of my way. And it's like, no, dude, it's 27 or 8 cars show up at these things every weekend, and 12 or 15 people can win this race.
Yeah.
So
I know. He does kind of bully himself through.
Yeah. So kind of just a weird thing. So I hope some of that settles down. It will probably settle when he finally gets a win or two under his belt, that'll probably change how he's driving. I thought he drove better at Coin, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I do too. But I
And
think there's,
yeah,
as we talk, there's something going on in Andretti and setups and trying to get them
Yeah.
right. And they just haven't been able to connect on that this year at all. It's just been all over the place.
Yeah.
And then you have everything implode 2 races or 2 weeks ago in the race. And now you're trying to bring it all back together here in Toronto, which is as we talked about, a bumpy street course that,
yeah,
you got to have the setup right. You got to have the damper springs right in order to get around there and put the power down and have the aero dynamics to keep the car, settled in the corners.
Yeah. 18th place, Devlin DiFrancesco, kind of a meh race. Stellar trip to Toronto, though, with all the terrific activities that he had. And they showed that, which was really nice, that Peacock showed a lot of the activities he had going on with Children's Hospital there, where he was born, and he was, he was cared for as a preemie. Yeah. And, where they took care of him. So it's really great to see somebody give back to the community that, help is a part of you. And so it was really, really nice to see that from that perspective.
Yeah, I did like that. But he started 12th and went back to 18th, and his 12th spot was secured through a red flag, I believe, or something with the yellows at the track. So good to see he got his best qualifying effort in his hometown. That's awesome to see. And the stuff you mentioned is fantastic.
Yeah. Alexander Rossi, 23rd. He had a really strong race going. Was battling with Felix, and it's kind of unprecedented, really, for Felix to just stick his elbows out like that. And Felix got in there, was battling side by side, and just turned Rossi into the wall and game over. So it's funny because Felix did radio back to the team, and he did say it in the post race as well, that something to the effect that Rossi always hangs in there too long, or he's always brushing against people like that during in passes like that. Is that the case? I don't know. I'm probably going to be watching it from here on out, but do you think that Rossi does that?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think Grosjean does, but I don't think Rossi does.
I think Grosjean does too.
Yeah. So maybe, I don't know. I guess I'm going to have to watch a little closer too, but Rossi's either on or he's not, I guess. That's kind of how his season's gone. But I think that's the whole Andretti squad. It's kind of gone like that. You're either on or you're not.
Yeah.
And is this karma? Like, you kind of did the same thing to your teammate 2 weeks ago, where they got bumped and knocked out, and he got bumped and lost his hands on the steering wheel again, which maybe he's very loose on his grip with the wheel, which is cool. That means you're in control of the car and you can move around really well. But and then he hit the wall, and man, it looked like a pretty big hit to me.
Yeah, big hit. Yeah,
there. By the time he got his hands back on the wheel and turned it was way too late.
Yeah,
but I guess it's the new era with the Indy cars, right? Little bumping is just fine.
So that's because they're so bulletproof. I mean, they are generally bulletproof. That wreck with Palou and Ericsson at Road America was unusual, because that bump didn't look as hard as what we see normally between people racing side by side. It took Palou out, and it was kind of surprising, because these cars are tanks. I mean, let's face it. So, third place, Felix Rosenqvist. So it wasn't for naught, right? Felix spent a good amount of time in the mid race fighting with Rossi. Might have run out of patience a little bit there. He brushed by him. I would just tell you, he elbowed by him and put Rossi into the wall.
Totally did.
That was it. Alex did give him some room, but not enough, obviously, and just how they went in there. There was no penalty on this thing. Race control didn't see it as anything more than just a race incident.
I was surprised. That's a very interesting call, because I think you could have gone either way on that one. I don't think there's really, it could be, because it was clear that Felix did get over on him, and which caused it, right? Because Rossi gave him room, maybe not enough room, but I think it looked like he pushed a little bit and then hit him, and that was the end of it. But like I said just a little bit ago, rubbing is IndyCar these days, which it never was in the past because the cars were very frail. You touch somebody,
Yeah.
you had a wheel that was off, and not in these. They just keep going unless you hit the concrete barrier.
Yeah.
From 1986, that's still strong.
1986, that needs a coat of paint. Hasn't had one since 1986. 11th place, 11th place award. MIA in this race, really. I mean, missing in action. Didn't really see him much. Never really seemed to be a factor. I think he was never a factor this weekend. I mean, he was, in practice and warm up, he was 20th, 12th, and 21st. So, and he qualified 15th. Felix unloaded better, and it showed in the race.
Yeah, you're proving my point that practice does matter.
No,
right?
Practice doesn't matter.
That's what you always say. You say it never matters,
Practice
but you got the numbers here. Yeah, and those are not good practice spots, times, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, he mentioned in the interview, he's like, the car's just not fast for whatever reason. And so I don't know. It was very odd.
Yeah, it wasn't. Oh, here we go again with another. I'm contradicting myself. So for Rahal Letterman Lanigan, I tweeted that I don't normally put a lot of stock. I don't put any stock in warm up or practice times, but in the case of Rahal, I do for this weekend. I am doing it for this weekend. This team has struggled mightily this
let's
season.
Just be official that practice matters. You got to have a
practice
good car.
Doesn't matter.
You got to have a good car coming up. Yeah, it does. Keep going.
Practice can matter, but it didn't, for most people, it doesn't. Like and I'm just going to make up numbers, right? If Scott Dixon went out in morning warm up and he finished, morning warm up in 15th, I don't think it matters. I don't think that means they missed the setup, right? They were second place on qualifying and then they missed I don't think that means anything for them. I think it just means that the car is safe. It's clean. It's not dripping anything. It's not, the seat's not loose and, somebody didn't leave a rag in the radiator.
Mm-hmm.
But in the case of Rahal, like I said, I mean, they've struggled mightily this season and way more than anyone would have ever anticipated. But apparently after a trip to Sebring for a team test session, they might have found something. They also mentioned at one point in the broadcast that they were also looking at pre-aero screen setups.
Oh,
so
so it's got to run the paddock. It's got to run the paddock. They're like, wait a minute, let's go back and look.
Yeah, so maybe some of these Honda teams have just been overthinking it for the last couple of years, and everybody's going back to basics, so to speak. Back to basics seemed to work because we got a 4th place finish out of Graham Rahal. Go ahead.
I was going to say, which is interesting, which should be one of our points, because you said the Honda teams did really well. They really took it to the Chevy teams. I know Chevy's got on the podium there, but otherwise it was Honda all day and all night at the top. So you look down
in
the
chart,
top
10, you have 3 Chevys in the top 10. Felix 3rd, and Scott McLaughlin 9th, and Joseph Newgarden 10th.
Yeah,
and it's all it's a Honda show. Yeah,
which is interesting because we've been talking about Chevy drivability, how fast they've been, how quick they've been, and they had some reliability issues as of late. And I think there was even one in this race. There was a Chevy that didn't make it out, which was Dalton Kellett.
Kellett.
Yeah, Dalton Kellett. Yep.
I
figure I know his name by now, but I don't.
Yep. Graham ran longer on that first stint than the front runners did. He started on the primary tires, so they gave him the opportunity to run long. And he needed to, because he was mired in a 14th place starting position due to that red flag. Whoever you want to place the blame on, Pallou's engine failure or Devlin DeFrancesco going off track and then having to rejoin. Nonetheless, it put Graham behind, but he had a lot of confidence in this car, something that we've not seen at Rahal Letterman Lanigan this season. And, he got it going. So according to Graham, P4 feels like a win in this case. Tim, I know you don't generally believe, I don't believe in warm-up numbers. You don't believe in moral victories. Is this the equivalent of a win, Tim?
Not typically. Not when you're talking about Rossi, that we've had this conversation about moral victories for him. I think, however, is a big moral victory here for the team and Graham and everybody else. And I know we're going to get there. I just would have liked to see Harvey do a little bit better too, because he seemed to struggle the whole weekend. But Lundgaard was up there and he did his thing too. So yes, it's a moral victory win for Rahal and the team. They did a good job.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see him on the podium, but it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
Just one
Eighth
off.
place for, yep, just one off.
Just one off.
Eighth place for Christian Lundgaard. Not much to call out here other than really a great result. You know, it seems to me like Lundgaard has a better handle on these Rahal setups, more so than Graham or more so than Jack does. Final results don't always show it because I think Graham is able to race these cars better than Christian or Jack. But
yeah,
you know,
and I think the big news here with
there.
Christian and the team is that they were in the top 12. They made it out of the first session, so that's great.
Yep.
And to your point, Graham would have made it out as well if there wasn't the red flag. So
absolutely, yeah.
They nailed it except for one.
Right.
2 out of 3.
Yeah, and Jack had a problem with the first stop. We didn't really see from Peacock. They didn't really show a replay on that. And, I mean, you know, why would you? But they didn't show the replay. I didn't really see how far that put him back, but he did have a problem with that first stop. You know, he started right next to Graham in Jack was 13th place, Graham was in 14th.
Yeah.
So, you know, I didn't see exactly what happened with that stop. It was extended stop. And then of course he had some rub in his racing with Roman Grosjean late in that race. And, you know, it's hard to pass here. I mean, you know, Pelot's finish, all evidence to the contrary, but you know, it's hard to pass there.
Yeah, you dive into turn 1 or you dive into turn 3. I don't know how that works on the track layout, but after those 2 long straights. Yeah.
Shank, 7th place for Simon Pagenaud. Good result here for Simon. I can't tell these cars apart on the track.
Can't tell the drivers apart when they're out of the cars either.
I can't. Seemed like both Shank cars had a lot of midfield action. 17th place for Helio Castroneves. Not a great result, but not sure how unexpected that is. I said that after Mid-Ohio, right? I think that finishes.
Yeah, you were pleasantly surprised by
his probably going to be. Yeah, I think road and street course finishes by Helio in the teens, I think, is probably going to be more the case than not. It was mentioned in the broadcast, though, that Shank was looking to re-sign Helio next year for a full-time ride, not just an Indy only ride. What do you think of that? Is that a good idea?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
You do?
I think he deserves another full season in the seat. He's been out of IndyCar for a long time.
He deserves it. Why?
Because he's Helio Castroneves. He's 4-time Indy 500 winner. He's done great things with Penske, and it's his first time back in full season. So I think once they get some more R&D under themselves and they got better setups on the car, I think Helio will do just fine. And obviously his result here doesn't show that. But I did want to mention the only reason I said that you can't tell them outside of the car is because they made a joke that when Pagenaud did. He said, I always get called Helio, and you know, he gets called Simon, like no one knows who we are.
Let me go back to what you said. Shank isn't going to have any better R&D. They're not going to have anything else in terms of, I mean, the drivers are going to come to grips with these cars, but their R&D is all coming out of Andretti. So they're going to get a car to plug in, and that's how they're going to plug it in. And I think Simon is probably a much better driver than most of us give him credit for. And I think that's where Simon's going to be able to, you know, really be the team lead at Shank. Helio's good on TV. He's great with sponsors. He's
totally
just an amazing IndyCar champion, Indy 500 champion, and just an all-around likable person. So, you know, from that perspective, I'd want him in my IndyCar too. But did he deserve it based on results? No. Based on past results? Sure. Can I mix a metaphor here for a minute?
Sure.
It's kind of like baseball, right? 5-10 years ago, we'd pay Joey Votto, Miguel Cabrera, Albert Pujols for what they did, right? So you got a 35, 37-year-old slugger who we just signed to a 5, 7, 10-year contract for $250 million because they were great in their late 20s, early 30s, right?
Yeah.
That's Elio.
I
We're
get it.
signing him to this deal because he was great then, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to what are you going to do going forward? Tim, he's our age.
I know
That's old for an IndyCar
He
driver.
doesn't look our age though. He looks much better.
No, because he's an IndyCar driver. And he's what, 5'4", 125 pounds.
I know. That's awesome.
So
good for him.
Right. So, but that's the thing, right? We're carrying over his greatness as opposed to, well, what does his career look like over the next 1 to 3 years? And that's part, don't get me started. That's part of my issue with Ryan Hunter-Reay. Yes, he was great back then. Okay. I don't think he's particularly great on TV. He's probably fine in front of sponsors and, guests. But what's he going to do for you going forward? I don't think he's going to do anything for you going forward.
How many sponsors did he have, by the way, for his career?
I don't know.
Ryan Hunter-Reay. Was it just DHL for, it seems he was a DHL guy.
Yeah, but there's always behind the scenes stuff. I mean, he was DHL when he was at our office in Plano, with the rest of Andretti. So, there's always behind the scenes things going on.
So you're saying Castro Neves should just get an Indy 500 ride and that's it from Shank next year?
That's what I think. Yeah.
That's what you think. And you put someone young in there to move that program along?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I could do either or. It doesn't bother me either way, but I think you put him in for another season and let him ride again. He's good.
I don't want to put him in a whole season.
No.
But I understand. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I wouldn't do it. If I were writing the checks, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it at all. Sorry about the squeaky chair. I'm in a hotel room. Penske,
Sioux Falls,
ninth
right?
place.
Sioux Falls?
Yes.
Right.
South Dakota. South Dakota.
Yes.
So it took us a long time to get to Penske. Ninth place, Scott McLaughlin. Quiet day for Scott. Great finish for him. He needs to play catch up, right? He got everything he could out of that car and out of that finish. He needs to play catch up before he gets left behind. I mean, we're going to get to that championship part. We'll talk a little bit more about it, but he got swallowed up by that field coming to green on lap 67, kicked off by an aggressive pass by Graham, who has nothing to lose at this point, who put Scott onto the marbles, and that put him back to ninth place.
Yeah, it was like a freight train going by.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Crazy. Just wasn't able to recover from that. Newgarden had a bad stop as well. His second stop, he missed his marks coming into that crazy little pit stall. That put him back. I don't know that he would have had enough for anybody in the top 5 anyway. Dixon or Herta or even Rosenquist. But 10th place was the best he could do there.
But up until that point, I was like, that's a championship drive he's doing, right? He doesn't have the car to win. He's hanging in 3rd, 4th, 5th, somewhere in there the whole day until they had that pit stop. So unfortunately, and I think it was a combination of him not being close enough to the pit wall. I think it was a fuel hose, and then some
he was too far away.
Yeah. So it's not. I'm not blaming the team, right? It's a little bit on the driver, right? You got to get in your pit box. You got to get where you need to be. But if it's 5 feet shorter than what you're used to, then you have no power steering. It makes it difficult, right? Really difficult. So I was thinking he was on and this goes back to some tweets I think we were talking about, but I think he was on a championship run just to get some points, where Power, on the other hand, was trying to make up for what happened in qualifying. Yeah.
Power has been snake bitten in qualifying and has found himself trying to play catch up a lot of ways. And he's been great luck in playing catch up during the race, but just that wasn't going to happen here. He was up to 12th place on lap 5, but he just fell back after that point. After that first stop, he had lost positions to Grosjean and Rahal. This golden strategy that they rode through Mid-Ohio just wasn't to be, in Toronto, unfortunately. He got away with it in terms of championship, didn't lose as many points as he certainly could have. But just snake bitten in qualifying. If he gets this qualifying thing and he was the king of qualifying for the longest time.
Yeah, but I don't think it was his fault.
It's not. You're right.
You just got to put a lap in sooner. Maybe that's what you got to do, right? Quit waiting to the end because someone's going to hit the wall and the red flag is going to come out. Yeah, he qualified 16th, but he was on a lap to advance when the yellow or the red came out. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
You're right. Maybe playing it just too smart, right? Trying to be too
Yeah, like,
smart, trying to overthink it. Yeah.
well, look what Devlin did. He went out on reds first and got through to 12th because he did that. That was a strategy move to go, hey, let's put him on reds. We'll get as fast as lap as we can out of this car. And they got it, and it just fell the right way that they made the top 12.
Yeah. 12th place, David Malukas for Dale Coyne Racing, 25th for Sato. Nice weekend for Malukas. He seems to be coming around with this team. As I've said before, I have great respect for Dale Coyne Racing. And I think this team is one that does very well with limited resources.
Yeah.
And I think the tie up with HMD, who is, Malukas' dad's company, is going to elevate this team, I think, for 2023. And they've also talked about adding a third car next year too, which of course helps the effort. And I tweeted this. He is my pick for Rookie of the Year, by the way.
I know. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And he did awesome. He did really good. And my pick was Lundgaard, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And he finished 8th. So my guy did better than your guy. Anyway, where it's not tit for tat. But no, they look good. He qualified 5th. He was in the fast 6, which is awesome. So he did that. And then they just kind of fell back a little bit during the race, which is unfortunate. You don't want to see that, but I always talk about that. Like, finish where you started then. 5th place would have been really good for that team, but they'll take a 12th and move on. He's been learning really well. He's quick, as we mentioned. And we'll see what they do in Iowa. Iowa's next, right?
Yeah. So your guy did do better than my guy. Your guy is doing better than my guy, period. Christian Lundgaard is first in Rookie of the Year standings at 183 points, and Malukas is 163 points.
Okay.
More notably, Callum Ilott in the smallest, most under-resourced team on the grid is 3rd ahead of Devlin DeFrancesco.
Very interesting. They keep it simple there, and they got a really good driver, so they make it happen. And they're talking about going to 2 cars next year. So we'll see.
Moving on, Ed Carpenter Racing seemed to miss the baseline as they arrived in Toronto. Daly was hit with a penalty for impeding. Renus just didn't have any answers until, of course, warm up, where he finished on top with a very respectable sub 1 minute lap.
Oh, okay.
You're gonna say it. I
Practice
put a little
matters.
stock in.
Practice matters, Dan. Don't take any stock in the practice times.
I don't know. I don't.
It tells you how the car's
the
handling. Like that's an indication of what the car is going to do on race day, is what you can do in practice.
If Scott Dixon would have finished 15th in morning warm up, it would have meant nothing.
No, I don't think because they're working on the strategy.
They're just making sure the car's not leaking.
Yeah, that and maybe a little bit of a stint just to make sure the setup's good for the whole stint. Maybe they're not tweaking it at that point. I don't know.
Yeah. Renus VK finishes 13th. He was hampered by a horrible qualifying position of 21st. With all the contract discussion around Palou and earlier with Rosenquist, Renus's name was in that mix. I don't know how he will be moving on at the end of this year, but I think, and I said it last week, I think a change of scenery would be good for him.
Yeah, I feel like there were high hopes for him to do a lot of good stuff, and it just hasn't.
Yeah,
it hasn't happened. But
it hasn't.
It's Ed Carpenter Racing too, and you talk about culture and all this other stuff. So, but no, I think he could do better. But anyway, yeah. Moving on.
Conor Daly finishes 20th, super long on that first stint as well. That didn't pay off. Again, poor qualifying spot because of the penalty. They gambled and it didn't pay off.
Mm-hmm. So we skipped Sato. I know you're moving along and wanted to keep going.
Sato wrecked. Sato didn't even complete one lap.
But did you see him drive all the way around the track with that car, just destroying the tray?
Yeah.
Very bizarre. I think he would stop and get on the hook and take that thing in so you don't ruin the rest of that car. So for a team that budget probably isn't huge, I don't know why the team wasn't like, stop. They had to throw the yellow anyways because he had debris everywhere. So I that's kind of a bonehead move. I don't like it. Anyway,
I'm with you. I don't know. That was overly ambitious, thinking they were going to repair that car
yeah,
to get it. There's no other reason for you to be buzzing around the track at that velocity,
it's
shedding parts and pieces all over the place. If you didn't think they could put the car back together, so it makes no
it's
sense. I don't know
bizarre.
why
And then I
they
think
allowed them
about
to do that.
qualifying and how he stayed on the
Yeah.
track and impeded Marco at the Indy 500. I'm like, that was a bonehead move too. There was two of them that just kind of stand out for him right now, which is odd because I don't typically see that out of Sato. Sato's the guy that's throwing it in the corner, and he throws it in deeper than most and hopes and prays to come out on the other side, and typically he does. But unfortunate for him to hit the wall. But bonehead move to drive around the track, in my opinion.
Yep. Juncos, great start by this team. I believe they continue to overperform the expectations. They're the smallest team on the grid, probably the least resource team on this grid. They got a great driver. Ilott unfortunately had some wing damage. I didn't see what happened to that wing damage or what caused that. I don't know who he came into contact with. It put him a lap down, and he never really made it much past the midfield at that point.
Yeah, when the wing was broken and he went down in the corner and took it too deep, it locked it up and he had to spin around and everything else. They go
Tim,
and change that.
he started 7th, and they crashed out of warm up or out of practice. And this team, he said it too. We didn't get to the simulator. We didn't be able to do. This team put him 7th on the grid.
That's nice,
right? Imagine what this team would do with like resources of a Rahal.
Yeah, but I think it just goes to show that you don't need a huge budget to do well. You just got to have a nice buttoned-up team that knows what they're doing and have the parts to go with it and put it all together. And I don't know where they're getting their setups from. I don't know if they're borrowing, if they bought setups, or if they're putting their own setups together. But we've seen them in the paddock many times, and it's a very small but tidy organization that seems like they know what they're doing.
Yep. Foyt just continues to go from bad to worse for this team. Kirkwood finished 22nd. Kellett finished 24th. He had a blown Chevy. Smoke and all, which is not normally the case, right?
Yeah.
Dalton was out on lap 33.
It was a sensor, though. It wasn't the engine. It was a sensor.
Yeah, whatever. Sensors oftentimes blow smoke like that out of the back.
That's what they always say. Keep going.
Yeah. Maybe it was just me, because I know where Kyle came from in Indy Lights. He's certainly very, very capable driver, and he's going to do some really cool stuff next year with Andretti, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed like he was doing better earlier in the year, but now I'm not sure, because I did go back and look at it. He has an average finish of 21st.
Wow.
Right. And then in this particular race, he turned Jimmy Johnson. That was an overly aggressive move that was 100% his fault. He didn't.
Corner, you can't pass that. Yeah, totally.
No. Yeah, he didn't need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Kirkwood said Jimmy turned in on him. He had to say something on the radio, right? I'm not buying it. I don't think anybody bought that. He wasn't alongside there, but and then he turned the car, probably had some damage, and then, or maybe not, and then retired the car. So, but I feel bad for Foyt. I've been saying that now for 2 seasons. I feel bad for them. I think, AJ Foyt, the name, the legend that comes along with it, I think they deserve better.
I think so too, but you got to put in you got to figure it out. They've been in the series forever, and they've always been second tier. I'll call them, almost say third tier.
That's kind. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what's going on there, but as we mentioned, something about culture and getting the business and getting the stuff done. I don't know if that's still like the good old boys, because back in the day it was good old boys, right? You go out and wrench on the car and then go do your thing and come back and go, yeah, it looks good. But I don't know what's going on with that team. Someone from the inside would have to fill us in.
Yep. Championship standings. Marcus Ericsson continues to lead, 351 points. Will Power, second place, 35 points behind. Alex Palou is 37 points behind. He moved up 1 position from 4th to 3rd. Scott Dixon and Joseph Newgarden are tied with 44 points behind. They swap positions essentially, right? So Dixon's now 4th place in the championship. Newgarden's 5th. Again, I've been saying that everybody wants Joseph Newgarden to win this championship. If it's coming from Penske, I still believe it's going to be willpower. Newgarden's finishes this year have been too erratic. That's all I'm going to say there. Pato O'Ward, 75 points out of the lead. He dropped one more. Scott McLaughlin stayed right where he's at in 7th place, 77 points behind. In Colton Herta, we stretched it out to 8th place this time, 97 points behind. He did drive up 2 positions. He's the highest Andretti driver, but almost 100 points behind at this point of the season. It would be a miracle if he was able to pull off a top 3 finish in this championship. Yeah. And you and I both have him as our champion.
I know.
Our preseason.
Which he needs. He needs a top 3, doesn't he, for his FIA points to get enough for Formula One? So something like that. So I don't see him getting there, right? Well, 60 points behind.
But he's going to have to buzz through, right? Newgarden, Dixon, Palou, and Will Power to get there. Not to mention, right, McLaughlin, Award, right? Everybody who's in front, he's going to have to buzzsaw through those guys. And I named the 4 because they're the ones I believe every weekend they show up, they have an opportunity to win somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
And with that Andretti car, even though it's Colton Herta, he's the most successful Andretti driver the last several seasons. He's still also up and down as well.
Yeah.
So moving into Iowa, which is next, the doubleheader in Iowa, which is essentially a double points race. It's going to be hot in Newton, Iowa this weekend. There's no doubt about it. I can't understand why IndyCar wanted these races during the day. Nobody asked my opinion, but I'm going to give it anyway because I have this show. It's going to be a difficult proposition to continue to fill these stands if it's in the 90s, sweltering heat. Hy-Vee, of course, has put a ton of effort into these races. I hope they're rewarded with a successful weekend this weekend, but ongoing. Like I said, I hope they do something to ensure that the fans continue to come out. They got a great show planned, not just the races, but they got the concerts and everything else that are going along with it.
Totally.
This is probably, outside of Road American, this is probably one of the races I really wish that we were going to.
Really?
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
Because I want to see this event. I want to see this massive event. Yeah. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I think the heat is going to be an issue. So I agree with you on that. And it sort of took me back when I was looking at, this event and looking at the notes. I was kind of thinking, it reminded me of that tweet that went viral about having awnings over the grandstands and shade for the patrons. And then there were a lot of angry people saying just saying basically, if you can't handle the heat, then get out of the kitchen, right? However that saying goes.
Yeah. Watch it on Peacock.
Yeah, but at the same time, it seems like a simple solution to help. If you want to have it in the day, like there should be some awning. And I think the thing that when the tweet went viral and people were angry about it and saying, I've sat out there for years and this and that, and all of a sudden pictures show up of these old tracks that all had awnings at one time that have all been taken down. So I think a few things here. If you're going to draw the casual viewer to come and sit at your event, number one, if there's no shade and it's super hot, they're either not going to come, or number two, they will come, but they won't come back because they just had a bad experience, all because of the heat. And Dan, I'm a weather guy, right? I love the weather, right? If the sun's out, I'm happy. If the sun's down, I'm not happy. So if the folks have a bad experience, you got them one and done, right? They're not going to come back and do that. But I'm looking forward to the event. I don't know if it's really not on my bucket list. But at the end of the day, they should put on a good show, and can't wait to see them on an oval again.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Speaking of here, before I sign off, I'm gonna head out and go grab some dinner.
It's late.
6 o'clock.
No, it's 7.
I'm in Central Time. So I'm gonna head out and go have some dinner. But you know what I'm even more excited about? And it's not dinner. I get to go to a Hy-Vee.
Oh, you're going to Hy-Vee tonight?
Yes, there's like there's a Hy-Vee 2.5 miles from here. So I'm dying to go into it.
So you want to
see
if I find set up in the display. All right.
I do, and I'm gonna
Yes.
buy something. I know.
You totally are.
If there's Jack Harvey gear, I'm buying it. I'm going
Oh
insane
Lord.
with whatever Jack Harvey gear I can buy.
You better
So
call your credit
I'm
card company and say, hey, I'm going to be making
gonna
some
love it.
purchases at High V.
Exactly.
Don't decline it
They're gonna be like, are you in? Somebody's trying to use your credit card in Sioux City.
at High V. Someone's trying to buy some.
No, it's me. I'm here.
Yeah, I'm actually here. Yes. Reply yes if you made this purchase. No,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you didn't, right? Don't you get those
Yeah.
text messages? I get them all the time. Like, yes, that
No,
was
my
me.
wife does, because my wife handles all that stuff. Not me. I can't be responsible for that.
Oh, that's right. And she's like,
No, I
yep,
do.
that's where Dan is. Yes,
That's
we
my
made this
husband.
purchase. Yeah,
That's not
so
out of the
funny.
blue. Well, that's it. That's all I got, Timmy.
Good. Do you have a winner? I know there's 2 races. Pick winner. Just one winner, and you get 2 tries at it because they have 2 races.
Joseph Newgard.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That's an interesting one. I have to go with a Ganassi car, and I'm going to go with Marcus Ericsson.
No, that's a good one.
Yeah. Why not? He's been
Good one.
super consistent, and I think he's going to follow up his Indy 500 win with another oval win. I don't know if it's going to be Saturday or Sunday, but that's why we watch the race to find out what happens.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll watch the race. It'll be fun. It's gonna be hot. I wish we were there.
And our listeners are going to get 1 episode from us, not 2.
Yeah, they're gonna get 1 episode.
I was asking for myself because I didn't really know. So now everybody else knows too.
Trying to think of where I'm at next week. Yeah, they're gonna get 1 episode from us because I'm in New Orleans next week.
Oh, that's right. You got to go. Yeah, you got another travel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's it. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Continue to engage with us on social media. Take a look at our Twitter handle, Instagram. I'm going to be buying some Jack Harvey gear tonight. I'll put some on Instagram, hopefully, if I remember. Check out our website, our YouTube channel, whatever it is. All of it in the show notes. Tim, it was a pleasure. Thanks for a great show.
And somebody from South Dakota, give us a shout out and tell us something great about your state. I'd love to hear it. So do it on Twitter or Instagram or to our email address, right? So
yeah,
I want to hear something good.
Or in the comments section of our YouTube channel, which we always get great comments there.
Oh yeah,
I love the comments we get in our YouTube channel. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, they're always great.
Those are fun to always see. When you have listeners overseas and you wake up in the morning and you got comments in there, you're like, oh, somebody's taking note and wants to interact with us. So yeah, do it there. Tell us something good about South Dakota.
That's for sure. So, hey, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week after Iowa.
All right, take care.